Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. On today's episode, Islam Makhachev stops Renato Moicano and breaks the record for most title defenses in the UFC lightweight division. Merab Dvalishvili rallies to defeat Umar Nurmagomedov after being down 2-0 on two judges' scorecards. Clutch. Alex Pereira and Justin Gagey have their next assignments. Let's talk about it. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He's here in Las Vegas, SBC creator. Danny Segura, our SBC coordinator. He's down in Miami, ready to rock and roll. Mike Bond, the MMA media titan, returns to SBC, fresh off of covering UFC 311 in LA. He's in Toronto. Cold coffee's on the ones and twos. Let's get going, fellas. Islam Makhachev stands alone in the UFC record books when it comes to title defenses in the lightweight division. Saturday night was his fourth title defense. And if you just see the ending sequence, right, like the highlights, and note that it ended in the first round, one could say it was easy work, right? But Money Moicano did land a big punch that got everyone's attention. And Mike, you were there live, man. Let's start with your reaction first to this historical main event.
Yeah, historical for Islam Makhachev, right? But obviously not the main event we were wanting or expecting or preparing for. But I guess credit to all parties involved. Moicano for stepping up, Islam Makhachev for being willing to take on a challenger in a scenario that was a lot more downside than upside for him. And then, of course, for the UFC for, I guess, bringing this together and making the guys feel comfortable financially under a situation like this. So for what it was, I think it went, I guess, as good as it could have for Islam Makhachev. He showed, as he said at the post fight, like, this is what the top guy should do. If you're fighting down the rankings, it's not a tooth and nail type of fight. He showed why he's number one and why Moicano is number 10, goes out there and finishes at the first round. So definitely not the same value in this win as it would have been Arman Tsarukyan, but for Islam, did what he needed to do. And I think that shows a lot about him coming out of this fight.
All right, Danny Segura, what were your thoughts on this main event, man? The Merab Dvalishvili had beaten Umar Nurmagomedov, right? And then going back to Moicano, putting it on Makhachev early on. The Dagestani fans probably had to be holding their breath there for a second.
I think it was more of a slip. I would have to look back at the exact replay, but it looked like he was fine. I don't think it was anything that was like any major shot that was threatening to Islam. But yeah, it was a super dominant performance from his part. He made it look like easy money, no pun intended. And he should, as Mike said, the champion pound for pound best against number 10 in the lightweight division. And congrats to Islam. I think we gotta give him a lot of props because Arman and Renato are totally different fighters, and less than 24 hours notice, or about 24 hours notice, maybe a little bit more. And he took that fight no problem. He had a lot to lose there, very little to gain. I mean, just another title defense and I guess a paycheck. But yeah, shouts out to him because a lot of champions, are not willing to do that kind of thing. And yeah, it just proves again why he is the best pound for pound fighter right now.
There's actually one who's a pound for pound fighter who has turned down a situation like that years ago. We'll get to that in a second when we talk about pound for pound and lightweight goats. But I know we did the watch along. The audience hasn't heard your reaction though here on SBC. Your thoughts on that main event?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting because, like the guy said, it's not the fight that we expected, but in the end, the guy did his job. He looked so calm and he was patient. He stalked his prey and he waited for his opportunity. And when he did, he made it count. But for me, what really stood out was just mentally everything that he went through, right? The change and all that. We talk about how dangerous opponents can be when they have nothing to lose. And that's what Moicano had. In a loss here, it probably didn't hurt his career all that much. Those guys are the most dangerous, and he just made it look like that was the assignment the whole time, right? Just the composure that guy has, his whole team has. He's not on social media much. He's not partying with celebrities. This is all he does, and it really comes off in the cage when he performs. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they celebrated with a late night training session. This is just all that they think about, and that really, really shows when he's out there. And I can't wait to see this guy fight again, man. He was really, really impressive.
That's true. And nowhere else can you get these types of highlights, folks. Danny, you sure? I thought I saw him get a piece of them there on that exchange because you put some doubts into what I was saying when I mentioned that strike. Or Mike, if you want to chime in, it looked like you got a piece of them there, or maybe there was a little bit of a slip to go along with a strike. No.
Yeah, I think it was a slip, to be honest, just the way he kind of seemed off balance during that exchange. But yeah, I mean, we didn't ask him about it at the post-fight press conference, probably should have. But yeah, to me, this doesn't look like a clean knockdown punch, in my opinion. And UFC stats did not count it as such. So there you go.
Okay. Well, I thought I saw maybe a left sneak in, but it's all for naught. This was about the time where the takedown came, and then when Moicano was creating the scramble, he left that neck out, man. That Darce is money for Islam Makhachev, that's for sure. Hey, okay, so we get to the press conference, like Mike mentions, right? And Dana White's asked, is he your number one pound for pound fighter? And of course, Dana White said, no, he didn't say John Jones. He said, yes, he is. How about that, Mike? What'd you think of him finally admitting to that same group of reporters that he's been boxing with all year? It's now Islam Makhachev, in his mind, pound for pound number one.
Finally. Yeah, long overdue in my opinion. I think it's deserved, and people will say, how do you do it off a win over, number 10 Moicano? If we are going to do the John Jones comparisons, I know you guys mentioned obviously the infamous UFC 151 situation where he didn't fight Chael Sonnen on about 12 days notice and they had to cancel the entire event. But another scenario I guess I can throw your way is, remember when Daniel Cormier pulled out of the rematch and Jones fought Ovince St. Preux for an interim title on like 10 days notice ish. He took the fight in that scenario, and look what happened in the fight. It was a 5-rounder. Like OSP had no chance in that fight, but it went the distance. And look, in this scenario, Islam went out there and finished the guy in the first round, which is what he said afterwards. This is what you should be doing in that scenario. So I guess that's another like tick in his column if you're doing the comparisons career-wise with him and Jones. And look at all these title fights he's finishing, man. Like, Islam is not a guy who goes out there and puts on, as much as people want to call, the Dagestan guys crotch sniffers and just like to wrestle and all that stuff. Yeah, he does grapple, and that's where the best part of his game is, but he's finishing everyone. The only title fight that has gone the distance with him was the fight of the year in his first fight with Alexander Volkanovski. So this is a guy who has that killer instinct in there. He's putting these dudes away, and he's elevating himself and separating himself from the pack. So to me, that is why he is deserving of this position, and just his quality of wins, man. Like, John Jones, not trying to take anything away. It's been a legendary, amazing career, but his best wins, you have to go pretty far back in the schedule for him for. Like, he doesn't have the quality of wins over that Islam has had in these recent years, and pound for pound is not a GOAT discussion. It's a partially what have you done for me lately discussion, and Islam is doing better work in my opinion. And Dana White finally sees that, I guess.
And we also pointed out how he went all 5 rounds with Ally Quinta when they did that shuffle at UFC 223, and Makhachev, his own teammate, that's his mentor we're talking about. No shade or anything like that. Habib was obviously a legend, but yeah, man, Makhachev figures it out and goes to work. He says he's a gladiator. I love it. Danny, how about you? Is he your pound for pound guy now with this 4th title defense?
He's been my pound for pound guy for quite some time. I mean, you just got to look at the guy. He's easily the best fighter probably that's ever existed, like in terms of like all around abilities. Like, he can do it all, man. He's a huge threat on the ground. He can wrestle his ass off. He's got knockout power. He can strike, not only just boxing, but several styles like kickboxing, the full thing. His IQ is excellent. I mean, this guy is a treat to watch. And I feel like, even though, we're talking about him being number 1 pound for pound right now, I still feel like he's fairly underrated. I feel like people are not really giving him his full due. I mean, this guy's just amazing. I do wonder, not to get all conspiracy and change the conversation into a different route, but we know Dana White can sometimes be very cryptic and have sort of subliminal messages in some of his comments and whatnot. Somebody in the chat pointing out how maybe this could mean that the negotiations between Jones and Aspen aren't going well. The fact that he kind of bumped him down from the pound for pound best. I don't know. Am I crazy for looking into that a little bit?
You're not crazy.
No.
That's for sure.
How does
Dana-
that help the situation, though? If you're trying to get John Jones to take the fight, how does downgrading him and doing that convince him
You're poking
otherwise?
the bear.
No, it's if he sees that fight's probably not going to happen and his expectations are unrealistic. I don't think he
he's
wants to
moving
be
on.
promoting him as number one and as the face
Sure.
of the promotion, this and that. Like you want to kind of, put him down a few levels and be like, well, yeah, he wasn't pound for pound. He's retiring. He wasn't pound for pound best anyways. We got the number one guy here. I mean, that's kind of what my line of thinking is.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I guess it's promoter 101 in that sense. But yeah, if there's completely thinking the Jones fight isn't happening, then I can see that. But if they're still negotiating and hoping it's can happen, that would be a little more surprising to me.
I mean, the more Dana talks about him in terms of talking about him in a good light, the more leverage he gets, right? Which was surprising that he was doing that all throughout 2024. So a change in tune here. I don't know. We'll see if that ends up meaning something or not. Hopefully not, because I do want to see the Aspinall fight, obviously.
Hey, I'm on a group text with Alex Pereira and John Jones.
Okay.
They're
they
telling
saying?
me, can you ask Segura and Bond, when did Makhachev win his second title, though, since they're so pro pound for pound Islam Makhachev?
I mean, he hasn't obviously yet, but he very much wants to, and we'll get into that. I mean, maybe he'll win 3 belts by the time it's over, which is what he said he wants to do. Obviously, that's a massive goal, but I think that has come in. It's just kind of weird right now with this whole situation of, Bilal being the welterweight champion and all that stuff. So I do think it's going to happen. It's just kind of a timing situation right now.
All right, that might have been Chris Goes Wild punking me, man. Maybe it wasn't Pereira and Jones that I was on a thread with. Hey, chat room, tell us, who do you think is the number one pound for pound fighter? You got John Jones, Ilia Topuria, Alex Pereira, Islam Makhachev. I imagine they're all in play. This is always a great chat. And how about you, Goes? Who's your number one?
I still have it as John Jones, but it's a matter of time. He's just going to get overtaken no matter what. Like Danny said, dude, this guy's just something else. He's going to keep building him on. And I do think eventually he probably will add another belt. That is probably a big thing that we talk about when we're talking about pound for pound. But my head is spinning a little bit. When I heard those comments, that was kind of the first thing that I thought as well, Danny, I thought, things might not be going well, right? Maybe he's laying the foundation there a little bit, and at the same time, maybe poking the bear a little bit, right? Hoping that people on social media put pressure on John Jones. You're gonna take that. You got to get out there. You got to do this and that. That's just kind of what he does, right? But it's really, really interesting, man. I don't know. It's always been traditionally difficult, I think, to deal with John Jones. So I was kind of shocked that he was just so much on him all of 2024. I felt like it was inevitable. He had so many chips in his favor, John Jones. I don't know, man. I don't know if this fight, I said it, I think at the end of last year, I just don't feel like it's going to happen. And I think Dana White's going to continue down the road of Islam Makhachev is the pound for pound king. He's going to
wait till March.
really
It'll
hit
be
that hard.
Pereira, and then when Topuria has to fight, it'll be him. Dana it's a carnival thing, man.
George, when he said John Jones, the whole time when he was saying he's pound for pound best, he never once said, but all it takes is one win for Islam Makhachev. He never said anything like that, let alone it being over Moicano. It's not like he saw the Moicano fight and said, now this guy's really good, right? So it's just kind of weird that he's.
I'd rather hear what you three have to say than what Dana White has to say when it comes to pound for pound, honestly. He just kind of rolls with the tide, right? But how about this one, guys? Is Makhachev the lightweight GOAT? Back to Mike Bond.
Yes, I think the fact that he has. I know Dan Tom won't be pleased to hear this. I saw his rant on the previous episode, but come on, dude, it's 14 straight wins in the lightweight division, 15 overall in the UFC. He set himself apart from the lightweight title defense record. I mean, is this not the similar situation as what Stipe Miocic had at heavyweight, right? It was kind of a low bar in terms of the title defense record. It was just like 2 at heavyweight, and he broke that. Then everyone's saying, well, he got the record. He must be the GOAT. There was like 4 guys tied with it at 3 at lightweight. Makhachev got us 4. And I know people are going to sit here and say, oh, a couple of them were against former lightweights, short notice Dustin Poirier, short notice Moicano. You can poke a hole in literally everyone's resume when it comes to this type of stuff. There's always flaws. There's always unideal situations. So for me, like what one of the people who held the record was Frankie Edgar. One of his title defenses was a draw against Gray Maynard, right? Like there's always
true.
the things out there that don't really make sense. So for him, he's going in there, you know, one of his defenses was against, at the time, Volkanovski was #1 pound for pound. The rematch, I know short notice knocked him out, but yeah, to me, he is the guy right there at lightweight, and he's got that form, man, and he's going to keep pushing it, in my opinion.
Danny, you agree? You got a smirk over there.
Yeah, 100%. I'm laughing at some of the things that are being said right now.
What are you guys, a tag team today
chat.
or what?
Huh?
Are you guys a tag team today or what?
I even said it like
He's
pre-Moicano
always been
victory.
that
I
guy.
do think he's certainly the best lightweight ever, and in terms of greatness, I'll stand by this. And
Khabib
look,
never
I'll catch the
lost.
Dan Tom
He
smoke.
barely
I don't
lost
care.
rounds.
I think we embellish a little bit too much the career of BJ Penn for like these outside factors that we romanticize. Like, yeah, he was badass and the licking of the blood, and yeah, he went up to another weight class and he would fight anybody anywhere, and you know, whole Hawaiian thing, and he's cool as fuck. Like, certainly probably one of the coolest champions we've ever seen in the UFC. But in terms of like just stats, like greatness, like what Islam Makhachev is doing is amazing. Also, we can't forget the way BJ Penn closed out his career too. That's got to factor in as well. I don't picture Makhachev going down that path. So 4 title defenses in what's historically been the toughest weight class in the sport, beat the #1 pound for pound guy, taking short notice fights on, you know, less than 48 hours notice to defend his title, making it look easy. I think this guy is the greatest we've ever seen at lightweight.
Over Khabib, though. Khabib's my major case, not Dan. You got
Khabib
issues with
retired
Dan
prematurely, and
BJ,
like
but for me, it's Khabib.
you can say
bro.
Khabib. Like, I'm
You
not
need
saying
one
he
more.
dodged anyone. I don't want to throw that out there, but like there were styles of fighting that he did not face. There were styles of fighting that we still have questions about. Would he enter a favorite against all those guys? Sure, but like some things didn't happen. Like right now, Makhachev is fighting the #1 guy back to back, and he's beating them all.
Wait,
Sorry, Khabib retired.
Moicano the #1 guy.
Huh?
You said he's fighting the #1 guys back to back.
No, I mean Poirier at the time was the #1 guy. Makhachev,
I think Poirier was right place, right time. Honestly,
he beat Charles Oliveira already.
Yeah, just got knocked out the year before at the BMF. Moicano steps in. I get that. Volk steps in because Oliveira couldn't go. I mean,
even if you
the
say,
one
okay, he didn't
loss,
fight Sarukian,
Khabib never lost,
beat him.
but 4
like
beat
they
3. I
haven't
get
fought.
that, but I think to distance himself, he needs like one more maybe, and then I'm with you guys. It's close, but I feel like it's right there for me. That's just my argument. I'm not saying you guys are wrong. It's subjective, but
so man, George, you have Khabib at #1 then? That's
for lightweight goat.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, dude, his defenses are obviously great. Like, look what he did. It's Connor, Dustin Poirier, and Gaethje and Poirier were obviously interim champions in those fights. So yeah, those were really quality wins. His resume is really strong as well. Definitely over, as you know, I mentioned the Frankie Edgar thing earlier. Danny mentioned BJ Penn, and then the only one out there too is Benson Henderson, who also had 3. But there was a lot of controversial decisions during Benson Henderson's era as the lightweight champion, both winning it and then defending it. So yeah, I mean, to me, Islam's the one who's going out there and winning it most definitively against the best guys right now. I know there is some crossover with Khabib in terms of opponents, but yeah, man, like the Volkanovski ones are really tough to beat, especially the first one when he was pound for pound #1. And
Great
the
fight.
Poirier one was quality too. So I don't know. I think his resume is just a little bit up there, and you got to take into account, like, we can't knock him on Moicano, man. Like, he was ready to fight Arman. He showed up. He was there, and Arman didn't show up. So how you take points away from Islam?
Yeah. No, it's close, guys. He's my #2 right now. I think one more, and I'm with you guys. Goes, how about you?
I guess if they're a tag team, then we must be. Might as well tag me in because I'm still on Khabib, but it's by a fingernail. Like, if tomorrow they announced Islam's fighting George and he beat George, that's all I need. Just a little bit more, and it's inevitable. But here's the thing, guys. It doesn't mean he would be the 55 GOAT forever, because one thing Khabib does have that holds a lot of power is the O. And if, you know, as Danny said with BJ Penn, all the losses, if something similar were to happen, that might actually bring him back down, right? It's the O that's so powerful, but I don't see that happening. Islam Makhachev is just a beast. I feel like whoever they put in front of him next, he's probably going to buzzsaw through them too, and we won't be having this argument anymore on SBC.
Yeah, that was a tough one just because does anyone, I mean, who knows, but if Khabib kept fighting, you have to imagine it catches up with him eventually somewhere along the way. He only had 13 fights in the UFC. Islam is at 16 UFC fights right now, and it feels like in a way he's just kind of getting started with this reign. So yeah, I know people want to hold that loss that Islam had against him, but you know, a lot of people thought Khabib lost to Gleason Tebow too. So there is some moments as well.
All right, guys, Sarukian, he got injured, and that's how he got to Moicano. But he's not. We don't know the extent of the injury, right? A back injury. What we're told though is he's not going to get the next title shot. Is that fair, Danny? What do you think? What are your thoughts on what Dana White clarified at the 311 post-fight press conference?
Sporting wise, no, not at all. If you look at the division, like if you had like 3 or 4 contenders and then this guy, you know, pulls out last minute, okay, maybe you can fill one in and kind of, I guess, teach him a lesson or whatever however the UFC views it, which I still think it's unfair. But if it's not Arman Sarukian, like a rematch with Charles Oliveira, like I would watch that fight. I think it's a good fight, but I think by this point in time, it's pretty clear who the better fighter is. Justin Gaethje's fighting Dan Hooker. Poirier, I'm going down the rankings here, already lost to him. Max Holloway's coming off a knockout loss. Hooker is obviously fighting Gaethje. And then now we're leaving the top 5 and we're going to go into 7, 8, 9, 10 and stepping into Renato Moicano territory to find a contender. So if it's not Arman Sarukian, then who is it? I guess make the Charles Oliveira fight. But if you ask me who is the biggest threat today to Islam Makhachev between Sarukian and Oliveira, I'm going to go with Sarukian all day. That rematch needs to happen. I get sort of the UFC's perspective. Like if the guy was injured and maybe he didn't say anything, I don't know how he handled things, but maybe there is a way that he kind of mismanaged things and then the promotion's not too happy with the result, obviously. Yeah, I don't know. I think Sarukian should be it. I have also seen some other theories been floating around online, which I'm a little hesitant on saying like publicly, but I'm just saying out there what people are saying. You know, he got injured, right? But, you know, we see that video with Nina Drama where he's doing all those crazy back workouts. He looks fine. Some people made comments about his crazy physique. Maybe there's something there as far as like PED stuff that that got flagged and obviously hasn't been announced. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. And maybe Dana, that's why he's kind of not wanting to give him a shot because it's probably going to be a while till he, if that's the case, till he fights again. But obviously that's just speculation. We don't know that to be true. But it is kind of weird that like he was the number 1 guy just a few days ago. You fast forward, he hasn't fought and he no longer is, or at least according to Dana White. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't think Dana was putting the math together, but we know that with the Muslim observance of Ramadan, which is a little earlier this year, but it ends like in late March. You can forget about Islam Makhachev probably fighting till at least May or June. That's when he fought Poirier last year, early June.
Yeah, he says he wants to fight International Fight Week.
Yeah, so now if that's probably Oliveira next, then Arman Sarukian's probably not fighting till the end of the year for the title. He's got to take at least 1 fight. So I don't know if Dana was at least telling us this is what I see, or if that was some sort of a little bit of anger coming out of him because of how it all went down. How did you read it, Mike?
So I guess a few things here as to what Danny said. I know the Nina drama video stirred a lot of thing. That's a pretty standard neck exercise, and I believe that was filmed actually a couple weeks ago. So like it's not like it was filmed, the day he allegedly hurt himself. Which, if you watch my interview with Parumpa,
yes,
American top team coach,
Mike, can I stop you for a second?
Yep.
That was a great interview, and he gave us a great timeline. And what it sounded like he said was that about 10 days ago, like on a Tuesday, Wednesday, not fight week, is when he initially heard it. And then he was starting to get better. And then something flared up, obviously, this
Wednesday
week.
Night.
Now, when I watched the video with Nina Drama, it said Jackson House. And a lot of the fighters were in Newport Beach. I don't know if it was to be away from the fires, the smoke, or what, but a lot of them were training out of that area. And that's why I was led to believe that it might have been this week. And maybe that could have flared it up. So that's my stance, and I've been saying it a few times on the watch along and on the show. But you tell me about what you know, and maybe you can fill in your details. I'm all ears.
Yeah, I'm not certain on the exact date of when that was filmed. That's something we haven't known definitively. So that's something, again, I mean, reluctant to think even whatever was happening in that video is something that would cause like such a significant injury. But yeah, if it was the Tuesday where he already had something and then the following week he tweaked it, I don't know. Like Armin's going to start speaking to media and stuff, I think, soon here. We'll hear his perspective on the timeline of things. But yeah, just not a great scenario for him regardless, right? Like some people feel even if you are injured, you go in there and you've made the commitment and you got to take the loss and just kind of go forward. Dana said at the post-fight press conference, I don't ever want anyone to go in there injured. But I think if you heard his tone a little bit of him, maybe felt like Armin could have gone in there to fight. So I don't know. It's a tough one. Like Armin goes in and he loses this fight definitively. He's 0-2 to Islam, and that's kind of it, right? He's painted into that corner. As bad as this was and as heartbreaking it was for all the Armenian fans that were there and just everyone who bought tickets to see this fight, things like that. I think the UFC will get over this. If Armin goes and wins one fight, I think he'll be right back in this position. So I'm not overly concerned about it. But to circle back, I guess, to the beginning and what could be next for Islam and whether it will be Armin next, Ali Abdelaziz, as much you want to put credit into his words, did have an interesting tweet last night saying the UFC has a completely different plan for Islam, which doesn't include Oliveira, Armin, or Ilya, but it's an unpredictable sport and you don't know what could happen. So if it's not any of those three, now kind of my face is going up to wonder what they could have in store for Islam Makhachev.
And it ain't going to be Bully, I don't think, because they're pretty clear that they don't want to fight.
And he had a follow-up tweet saying if Justin Gaethje beats Hooker, he could be next. If Beneil Dariush fights Poirier, he could also be next. These are two names that Islam hasn't fought yet, but I don't see a world where, I mean, the Gaethje fight would be sellable, but I don't see how that's more deserving than Oliveira or Armin. Yeah, either of those guys.
How about you, Goes? Let's get your thoughts. Make them quick. We got to play a little catch up here on our time.
I think in the chat, Steve Williams, he says Dana seemed displeased, right? And I think Mike hit the nail on the head. It's the tone. We all know Dana White's tone, and that tone was not good. For me, I mean, Tsarukyan, he did something to get the shot. He earned it, right? If he's injured, I don't think it should take it away from him. It should just postpone it. But if the timeline doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's just the way our sport operates. So I don't think he should be surprised by it. But I do think it's unfortunate. And I think we should read into Dana White's tone a little bit.
In Pahumpa's interview with Mike Bond, he said that when Heather Linden, who Dana White references in his comment there at the post-fight press conference, and Hunter Campbell visited, Tsarukyan couldn't even stand up. I don't see a coach going out of his way to say that if it didn't really happen. And therefore, that was, I guess, his way of maybe showing just something went wrong. I remember Daniel Cormier saying he sneezed and couldn't move his back. Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens as the year unfolds. But again, because of Ramadan and Oliveira's presence, I just don't see Tsarukyan fighting until the end of the year. Let's get to Merab Dvalishvili real fast. And it's unfortunate that we have to maybe rush through this, but this was a great title defense, a great fight. I think it started off 2-0 in most people's eyes, except for one judge who had it 1-1. We saw the media was scoring that way, the announcers were scoring it that way, and then all of a sudden Dvalishvili just turns it on, man. Great fun fight. Mike, back to you, man. You made the trip to LA. What was your feeling inside that Intuit Dome? It did seem like a pretty special fight, a legendary fight.
Yeah, it was great. I still haven't, obviously just got home like late last night, so I haven't had the opportunity to watch it back on the broadcast, but sitting there cage side, tremendous. Umar looked unreal in those first 2 rounds, and you're like, whoa, is this going to be kind of the coronation moment a lot of people are expecting? But then I guess if you were predicting how this fight could unfold, it was probably going to be Merab is going to maybe be able to expose some cardio and take over late, and that's pretty much what happened. And sitting there, like, with the other media, a lot of us felt pretty clear that Umar won the first 2 and that Merab won the last 2. And it was like, is this round 3 maybe going to be the swing round? And a lot of us felt that did go Merab's way. So I was not surprised by the decision. I know Umar has since spoken out thinking that he won the fight. I mean, if you looked at their 2 faces, I guess you could agree, but we know that's not the entirety of what these fights are scoring on, and Merab's pace and pressure and takedowns are just crazy to witness every single time you see this guy fight. He's unbelievable, but I did think he was the rightful winner here and just continues to do incredible things, man. Like his shin, I saw the photos of when the original injury happened. I know he showed off at the press conference, and that thing was like nasty gashes, man. So for him to go in there, he was dealing with the back thing as well. Short notice, was essentially pressured into this fight, and he goes out there and wins it. So like this was a massive win, a defining win in the legacy and career of Merab Dvalishvili. And I thought this was the one that he would lose if he was going to lose that belt to a contender. Now it's like, how long is this going to go? Because I don't give anyone a chance of beating him. I still think Umar probably has the best case, and he's going to have to, get the hand fixed and then probably win another fight or two to get back to a rematch. So good luck to all the bantamweights out there. This guy's a beast.
Danny, what were your thoughts, man? And to top it off, Merab's clowning at the end. You just never know with it being 2-2 if Umar lands, just some really solid punch, it could sway that 5th round. But what did you think of that fight?
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought that I picked, first of all, Umar Nurmagomedov to win. I did think that maybe it could be a close fight, especially towards the end when Merab's cardio would sort of kick in and have more weight during the fight. But I thought Umar was the better fighter, honestly. And I still maintain that. I think if this is a 3-round fight, I would favor Umar to win, and I think he'd probably be the favorite. He showed in rounds 1 and 2 that technique versus technique, he does have a little bit more cleaner wrestling than Merab. His striking is a little bit better. He's more dangerous. However, that cardio is king, man. That cardio is unreal because Umar is a very good athlete. Umar is a professional athlete that trains extremely hard, and it made him look like he was a pro fighter versus an amateur, in terms of cardio and physicality. Merab is a machine. That guy is insane. So yeah, that guy's going to be tough to beat. If you don't get him out there in the 1st or 2nd round, good luck fighting him in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I did score the fight for Merab 48-47. I did think that 49-46 card was a little crazy. But yeah, all in all, Merab is a beast, and I don't see him losing the belt anytime soon. I've said this. I said this a lot on my Spanish YouTube channel, Hablemos MMA, in the lead up to this. If he were to defend his title against Umar Nurmagomedov, we at least have guaranteed 2 or 3 more title defenses from Merab, because right now, given the current landscape, I don't see anybody beating him. Who's the next best challenger? Peter Yan? Well, he already beat him. He pretty much cleaned out that division. We'll see what other names come up in the next year and a half or so. But right now, I think we have guaranteed 2 or 3 title defenses from Merab Dvalishvili.
Funny you should bring that up. Goes, I want to go to you with that. We know your reaction to the fight. We call the fights. Who do you think should be next? O'Malley, who's there, present, former champ, or Peter Yan, who is a former champ? 2 impressive wins since he kind of went through his little phase. Which direction would you go in for next for Dvalishvili?
Look, don't we normally see Sean O'Malley in the cage or putting his hand up? I don't think anybody was putting their hand up. That was a scary Merab Dvalishvili in that cage. He did some pretty amazing things. I'll be honest. I thought today we would be talking about Umar Nurmagomedov and his reign, his potential reign. But here we are talking about Merab again. This guy has set it up to be a legend in that division, and I don't see anybody really giving him trouble, but you have to put somebody in front of him. I would put Peter Yan in there, and we'd have to figure out what we're going to do with Sean O'Malley, but I don't think either guy right now might not have what it takes to take this guy out.
I think Peter Yan's his toughest opposition. Chat room, what do you think? The chat is blowing up. I love the passion out of you guys coming off a big event. Tell us who you think Merab Dvalishvili should fight next. Peter Yan's been thrown out. Sean O'Malley. Is there someone else out there that you think fits the bill? I'm not ready for Merab moving up, so please don't suggest him versus Topuria, because if anything, Topuria is now looking to go up as well. All right, crazy stuff. Great event. We got to move on, though. There was also some other stuff going on here. Prochazka versus Hill. Danny, what did you think of this result, man? I don't know who you took on Stat Picks. I didn't glance. I just want to know what you thought of the fight. Is this the way you expected it to go?
100%. there were some fights that I obviously didn't get right, but this one I called to perfection. I did think it was going to be a war. I did think both fighters were going to have their moments, but I didn't see this going a distance. And I saw Jiri Prochazka getting his hand raised. He's just the more dangerous fighter. Like, yes, Jamal Hill is dangerous as well. He's got power, and he is a little bit more technical and a little bit more defensively sound than Jiri. But all in all, like, not by a whole lot. Like, there's still some pretty big holes in Jamal Hill's defense. And I think offensively, Jiri is just a lot better. Plus, just the better athlete as well. He was carrying a little bit extra fat in terms of Hill competing there that night. So yeah, this could go either way, but I felt pretty confident in picking Jiri Prochazka by knockout, and that's exactly what we saw. And it was a great fight. It was my favorite fight on the card, believe it or not, and it delivered. I thought it was the best fight on that night. So awesome fight. Respect to both these guys, and yeah, really interested to see some of the matchups coming out of this one, because I think Khalil Roundtree and Olberg, those guys need to get matched up against these guys. I don't really care too much about the order, who against who, but I want to see some really good striking fights between those four. So I'm all for it. Plus, we'll get into it later, but I'm so happy that we're not here discussing like, oh, could this guy be next for Alex Pereira? No, we got an answer to that also on that card.
True.
So fantastic fight. Loved it.
Yeah, Mike, you were there in person. I was on the edge of my seat at home. You were there in person. Two former champs. They can both put your lights out. There wasn't trash talk, but we clearly had, at least according to the fans, a heel and a baby face. What were your thoughts on this bout?
Yeah, it was good stuff. I think this was the first fight announced for this card, so we've known that this was coming for quite a while here, and I think it delivered. Jamal Hill, I was wrong about this. I picked him to win this fight, but I had a huge red flag on fight week when, came to media day and confirmed that he started his camp around 260. And you imagine just most of it was spent trying to get down to the weight more so than we're improving your skills and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the parts I hate about weight cutting too. It doesn't allow you to focus on being your best fighter because you're spending so much of the camp losing weight. And, he's had a lot of serious injuries in recent years. So I don't think this is like the best version of Jamal Hill that we can get, but I think it was one of the better versions of Jiri Prochazka. He spoke so much about how he worked on keeping his hands up and his defense. We saw moments where that did go out the window a little bit, but his head movement was very on point in the night. Like that finishing sequence where he dropped him that final time was lovely striking. I mean, look at this guy. He was just on point this night, and he obviously had a lot of motivation, with the woman that was kind of supporting him throughout fight week, and he was showing her support, who's been, battling cancer. So there was just endless motivation for Jiri Prochazka to win this fight and, make a statement to the division. It's real hard, as we know, to get a third fight with a standing champion. We will see if Alex Pereira remains the champion for a few more months here, but if he does, Jiri, I think, is going to have to do a little more work. But I asked Dana White at the post-fight press conference, would you be willing to do a third fight? What would it take? And he seemed to show interest of being like, I don't think the fans would be mad at that one. And then you saw Alex Pereira doing an interview, I believe, with Megan O'Leary that aired on the post-fight show, where he said once he beats Ankalaev, he'd be willing to give Jiri that third fight. So this was a massive moment for Jiri, and he did exactly what he needed to do. So good for him.
Mm-hmm. I like Hill versus Roundtree. You guys feeling that?
Yep. I like it.
I like Jiri versus Roundtree. And I was going to note that as well. Like Alberg, is fighting Jan Blachowicz in London. Right. So that kind of takes him out of that equation for Danny for now.
I guess the winner of that, maybe.
Yeah. I think that would make a lot of sense. But to me, I do think I like the idea of matching up, some of the recent title contenders and people who have lost to Alex Pereira. I'm sure Roundtree badly wants a rematch as well. So to get through Jiri, that would go a long way for him.
All right. We got to keep it moving. We can discuss this all day, honestly, because so many things went down. Goes RDR 2-0, coming over, a champ from one championship, comes over. Quick work of Kevin Holland. What do you do with him next? Rainier the Ritter, for those that don't know.
That's interesting. That's up to the UFC and the way they want to handle this guy, right? The first fight, he didn't really blow people away, right? It wasn't the toughest challenge, and he maybe could have got a stoppage early on, but it didn't really go the way I think he wanted it to. If the UFC wants to embrace him and promote him, we've seen guys come over like, say, Ben Askren, right? At first, I think he came over and they were trying to put over Robbie Lawler a little bit in that matchup. It didn't work out, but then they embraced him. And I think that's what they should probably do with RDR because he's very charismatic. He's a really good fighter. He has done some great things outside of the UFC. I think it's time to maybe put something behind him and put him in something fun.
Danny, how about Peyton Talbot? You know, we were expecting a lot from him, but he just did not look good. And shout out to Raoni Barcelos, who felt disrespected by the odds.
Yeah, as I said on the previous show with Farah, I had a full trip on that Peyton Talbot train, the whole meal plan, everything. Like I was, this guy's ready for the rankings, but I think all that hype and all those expectations really crashed down, and we really got a sort of a reality check with Raoni Barcelos. Raoni Barcelos, by the way, great strategy and all, but if you are a near future title challenger, you are expected to defeat Raoni Barcelos. And it's not like some other guys haven't been able to get through him in recent times. No, a lot of them have. So I think we got a big reality check with Peyton Talbot. I still think there's a lot of potential there, star potential and also sporting potential. But I just think it's going to be delayed for some time. I do wonder, because he, even in the sort of striking, the little bit that we saw from striking, it didn't look great. I really do wonder how he's dealing with all the fame. I mean, we've seen him hang out with like Tony Hawk, and Frank Ocean was there. Apparently they're buds, and he was there.
Posted Instagram stories of him making food and stuff.
Yeah. So like, I know he's like, his life has changed a lot in the last year or so. And I do wonder how much that gets to him. Hopefully not, but we definitely can't discard that idea. So again, big reality check, back to the drawing column, keep him away from the rankings for a little bit and see how he evolves in the next year or so. The good thing is that he's just 26 years old. So he's still like 2 years away from his prime. So there's a lot of time for him to develop. But yeah, big reality check. He ain't ready for the rankings just yet. I was wrong.
Mike, George, if I could just jump in real quick, reality check for a lot of the guys on this card, right? 4 undefeated fighters who came in, all lost their O's on this one. Peyton Talbot being one. Yeah, all 4 on this card. Another one being, and I'll just acknowledge the question from Masters of the Universe Classic. He said, what did you think of Clayton Carpenter's performance? He's another one who lost his O against Tagir Ulanbekov. I don't have too many thoughts. That was a decent fight as far as who he could fight next. Pretty much anyone at flyweight, probably also coming off a loss, but just wanted to acknowledge that because Masters of the Universe Classic has given us some good questions in there.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to go to you, Mike, where, all we talk about is Jones and Aspinall when we think of heavyweights, but Jailtown Almeida and Sergey Spivak, that was interesting, wasn't it? On the ground, one guy would take control, then he'd get swept back and forth until Jailman got the win. What did you think of that fight?
Yeah, it was fine for like a heavyweight fight. You've seen many worse sloppy heavyweight matchups, so I think this is like what you can ask for. There was some entertaining exchanges. You don't usually get that type of grappling, both offensively and defensively at heavyweight. So I think these guys kind of knew the assignment. They followed through on it. And Almeida just the better one at this point. Spivak has had some good moments in the UFC, but I think Almeida is a real force there. And if they do end up making Jones versus Aspinall, please give this man Ciryl Gane, because he has called him out enough times at this point and done so following solid wins that it's time to give him that matchup.
Mm-hmm. Guys, this is your chance to tell me another highlight from 311. Let's make it quick. Back to goes. Anything else you want to shine on from the card?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Our original co-host on MMA Junkie Radio, Frank Trigg, seeing him as a ref in some of the bigger fights there on the UFC, and a guy like Chris Lieben, right? These are guys that are contributing still to our sport, making it better. I thought it was really cool to see them in those roles now.
Danny, how about you? Anything you want to shed a light on?
Yeah, Aileen Perez, I thought she had a really, really tough fight against Carol Rosa. I thought that fight was going to determine whether she's like a legit contender or not, because clearly on the social media and just media side of things, she's very good at it and probably the best fighter right now doing it in the women's bantamweight division. So, it was time to kind of see where she's at sporting wise, and she did great. She had a great fight IQ, managed a very, very tough fight, pulled off a solid decision win. No controversy around that. And I think when the rankings update on Tuesday, it's pretty safe to say that she's going to be in the top 10 and probably big fights await for her next. So shouts out to her, 5-fight win streak, unbeaten at 135 pounds. Yeah, she looked great.
I want to shout out Grant Dawson. He's like 11-1-1 in the UFC since coming through the Dana White Contender Series, but he doesn't move up because he doesn't fight a lot of ranked fighters. I think some of them turn him down. Who knows? He came up short against Bobby Green, but he's dusted himself off, keeps coming through. But I think he's getting it now. He's lining up names, giving you, what he wants, and I think that might help him. He said Beneil Dariush at UFC 314 in April. Hopefully he gets it. I like that matchup. Sucks that Dariush did not get to compete, but I heard he did get win and win bonus and show bonus. So good on the UFC for doing that. Remember about a few months back, Chris Weidman had some gripes. Same situation. He didn't get his full pay. But Mike, if do you want to say something real quick about the Intuit Dome before we move on?
Yeah, just a very
It
cool
looked pretty
venue
cool.
to be there for the first time. I think everything came off well. I mean, the in-house graphics were super dope, and then you go look through the photos, screenshots from the broadcast, like those chairs and the stuff that lit up in the background. I think added just a nice little element. When I first got in there and saw how bright it was, I was wondering if it was going to impact the fighters, just all the visuals outside, but didn't really seem like anyone had any complaints. That is an unbelievable venue, and if anyone has the chance to go see any type of event there, I would definitely encourage them to do so.
It looked really, really cool. 18,000 and change were there. The gate was over 10 million, so home run for LA. But too much Clippers for me. That's why I had to wear my LA Lakers shirt just to kind of maybe, settle
I think
that.
they took an L there at the Intuit last night there, didn't they, George? Your Lakers to the Clippers?
Oh, man, he had to bring that one up. All right.
Sorry about
We're moving on to how about the movement going on here in MMA? Holly Holm asked for her release. She got it. Mike, you surprised?
No, I'm not. I think the UFC has squeezed every bit of juice out of the career of Holly Holm as it possibly could at this point in time. So, I think like Danny mentioned someone like an Alien Perez, like she's got her own momentum, things like that. Like someone on a streak like her would probably end up fighting a Holly Holm in a main event, like at the Apex. That's usually the scenarios that we kind of get. And then she'd probably lose. So like, I think getting Holly out of the way, allowing this division to flourish a little bit makes sense. She can go return to boxing, end her career there, and I think there is actually some notable fights out there, right? Like she could fight Amanda Serrano, she could fight Katie Taylor. These are people in her weight range that have really elevated the sport of women's boxing. It is a completely different entity as it was both exposure wise and pay wise as it was when Holly Holm last competed in boxing more than 10 years ago. So I think that makes a lot of sense for her. See Oatmeal 26 in the comments mentioned Karate Combat. I could see that as well. She says she wants to do one more MMA fight, one more boxing fight. So I think this just kind of made sense now for them to take this clean split. And if you listen to her interview with Ariel Helwani, she said that the final two fights on her contract were not promised, which kind of leads me to believe maybe she asked for her release before the UFC could get around to releasing her on its own.
Danny Patricio Pitbull Frady has been very vocal about wanting to get out of the PFL, and it looks like he got his wish. But when Dana White was asked about him, he kind of really didn't have any definitive answer. I know he was getting ready to board a plane, but he went out of his way to say that he'll have to talk to the guys to see. How about you? Do you think he winds up there, and do you think he could have an impact in the featherweight division?
I really hope so, because there are so many fun fights for him, and I think he can compete both at 145 and 155. Imagine Patricio versus Volkanovski, Patricio versus Max Holloway. I think, he's obviously towards the tail end of his career, but I think you could get 2-3 good fights out of him. This is a guy that we've always wanted to see in the UFC for such a long time. He's a free agent now, still relatively in his prime, big name. If you want to spice up the featherweight division, look, and maybe he just wins one fight at featherweight and then you throw him up against Ilya. Who knows? That could be really fun as well. I think the UFC should sign him, even just to get 2-3 fights out of him. I think it's worth the money. So yeah, hopefully we see him in the UFC.
MMA fans, don't laugh. Eddie Alvarez came over from Bellator and won a title. Michael Chandler's won some big fights. Ben Askren won one as well. There's been a few others that have come through and done well, and this is arguably the best fighter Bellator's ever had. He's a champ over there. So we'll see, but he is kind of on the tail end of his career. But Guz, when Dana was asked about Aaron Pico, he said the matchmakers really like that one. How about you, man? This is another featherweight who's got some wrestling and nice hands.
Oh yeah, and so much room for improvement, right? He's a lot younger. I think that's a big thing when we're talking about some of these fighters and how they're gonna come over. A guy like Pitbull, it's gonna be difficult, like negotiating your contract, especially when you don't have very many options outside. But a guy like Pico that has so much upside, I think this might actually work out for him, and I think he would be really fun in the UFC.
Vili Koistinen, something like that, says Pitbull versus Ige. I like that one. Mike, Chris Weidman retired straight to the Hall of Fame. Thoughts on his career, real quick, please?
Well, hopefully not straight to the Hall of Fame. I'm a strong believer. Give these guys like a moratorium of retirement window, because the Jose Aldo thing just broke my heart. They put him in the Hall of Fame, then he came right back. So like, I don't want to see any of that. Make sure they're retired for a little bit of time. But yeah, overdue. Weidman. You wonder if this missed spinning back kick against Luke Rockhold didn't happen, where his career would be at. That seemed like the turning point for the worst for him. But yeah, I mean, the Anderson Silva fights, he had a strong run as middleweight champion. I think he will be in the Hall of Fame. And yeah, this was the right time. I mean, I wish he retired after the leg break, but he really wanted to come back and show that he could fight and overcome that adversity. He did that, but just not the same guy.
3 title defenses. Yeah, for sure. I think he deserves to go in the Hall of Fame, and he's the one that took out Anderson Silva. All right, guys, big fight bookings took place this past weekend, and they were announced, and it clears a lot of things up. Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker at UFC 313 on March 8th here in Las Vegas. So UFC 312 is the one in a few weeks in Australia with Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland, Zhang Weili, and Tatiana Suarez. But 1 month later in Las Vegas, we got that one, 5 rounds, co-main event. Reaction to that, Danny?
I love it. I think it's a great fight, and I've been a big proponent for Dan Hooker to get big fights, because for whatever reason, like we see the Gaethjes, we see the Poiriers, the Chandlers, those are like A-list sort of lightweights. Dan Hooker's not really there yet. He's kind of like B+. So he does fight the Claudio Puelles, the Jalen Turners, those type of fighters. But like, I feel like the guy should be considered an A-lister. Like, he's given us really good fights. One of my favorite fights was his fight at night against Dustin Poirier a few years back. Too bad it was at the Apex, if I'm not mistaken. And I feel like that was a great fight, and a lot of people are unaware of it still. I think it's time to put Dan Hooker against those bigger names, because he's probably not going to be champion, let's face it, but damn, can he give us amazing fights. So this is the type of matchups that I want to see from him. So I'm happy with that. The only thing that I do dislike about this fight is that, where does that leave Poirier? Because I was convinced, and I've been a big proponent of that trilogy against Dustin Poirier for Dustin to retire. I mean, I think that is the perfect, right? They're 1-1. They main evented a pay-per-view without a proper belt. Obviously, the BMF was on the line. Yeah, do the trilogy, 2 OGs, great fighters. And now with this booking, Hooker and Gaethje, I wonder if maybe that leaves out Dustin Poirier trilogy with Gaethje. So that's the only thing that I dislike about it. But all in all, like, it's going to be a war. There's going to be blood, and I can't wait for it.
I was going to go to you guys, but I know Mike is usually in tune with what's happening with Poirier's career. So since he's been brought up, that is a good question. What do you think? Where can we pencil in Poirier as a possible return for him, since he stated he's going to do one more?
I think it happens probably early summer. You hear a few different things, and this is not like official reporting, so no one out there like aggregate me or anything, but I do think they are trying to look into an event in Louisiana and maybe have something in New Orleans for Dustin's final fight, get to do it in his home state, which would be amazing. As far as the opponent, just look at kind of who's available and who's not booked now at lightweight. The one that really stands out to me is Max Holloway. I think you could maybe pencil that as like high on the list of what could be in the running for that fight. Do that as the main event in Louisiana. I'm sure Max wants those 2 losses back. That one breaks my heart because I love both those guys. The last time they fought in Atlanta, watched the whole thing through my fingers. It would probably be another amazing fight, but I wish that wasn't the case. But just in the process of elimination, I feel like that's where we're trending. But I do think if they need some big fights for that Miami card, Dustin could also be in the running for that.
All right. Goes, your thoughts on Hooker versus Gaethje, and then when you're done with that, let's move into what's going to be the main event, Ankalaev against Pereira. But first, the co-main event, 5 rounds for these 2 lightweights.
I think the first thing that popped in my head was, can we bring Stitch back? I mean, that's going to be destruction. Those 2 guys, they don't know how to not keep their foot off that gas. Like, it's going to be a lot to prove there for Justin Gaethje, to the fans, to himself. I see him coming forward, and Dan Hooker, I see him inviting that. That's just the type of guy he has. He's had this resurgence in his career, and I think this is time where he can get a little respect on his name. And then, Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. I mean, come on, man. What Alex Pereira has done is he's translated into must-see TV. It doesn't matter who you put in front of him. We all have to watch it. And I think this will be his toughest challenge. And especially if he can survive that wrestling, if he can show us that he has that in his game, boy, will we be looking at him in a different light.
For sure. And like I noted earlier, Ankalaev, a devout Muslim, will be doing a lot of his training throughout Ramadan. And for those that aren't familiar, Ramadan is a Muslim a month of observance where you cannot drink or consume food, drink any liquids or consume any food through between sun up and sun down. Now, it's been done by other athletes. I remember Hakeem Olajuwon would play for the Houston Rockets through that. And I know Bilal Muhammad has fought through that, but a lot of athletes have just taken it off. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that the ones that have taken it off is because they just didn't man up. I think a lot of them are just so devout into their religion that they don't want any distractions. In fact, some of them need some time to get off that cycle. So therefore they don't fight, like, let's say, the week after or anything. But Ankalaev is right in the storm of this thing. So much respect to him there. And Pereira is finally taking on what many people could feel it could be his kryptonite. Although Ankalaev has said, hey, I'm going to stand. He stood in his last fight the whole time. So this should be a good one, man. What are your thoughts on this one, Mike Bond, when you heard about it?
I mean, I felt this was coming. This was the fight to make. The timing of it is just, a little rough for Magomed, but sometimes this is what you got to do. And, Alex Pereira said in his interview that I alluded to earlier with Megan O'Leary, he's like, I said the UFC, I wanted this fight on this date. And I picked the time frame, and it's picked at the time that's, most inconvenient for Magomed Ankalaev, but that is the champion's advantage. Alex Pereira saved the UFC all through last year. He was the MVP, a lot of people's fighter of the year. So if he makes the request and the UFC needs a main event on that pay-per-view in that time, damn well they're going to take it. And for Ankalaev, you got to do it under these unideal circumstances. Unfortunately for him, we're coming up on 3 years since his draw with Jan Blachowicz for the title. He probably should have been fighting for the belt immediately again after that. It's taken this long. So you got to do what you got to do. And you see his tweets out there, whether they are written by him or someone else. This man is talking a big game. So he is either going to become the new champion in glorious fashion or face one of the biggest crash outs in a defeat that we've probably seen in recent memory, given the comments he's made. So I am very excited for this fight. Alex Pereira has got a lot of favorable matchups, I guess you could say, in terms of stylistic things for his opponents. This is absolutely not, and I will be annoyed if Magomed Ankalaev goes out there and at least doesn't try to grapple him a little bit, because if he just stands in front of him and gets knocked out, you're going to be like, bro, you just another one who lost out on their chance because they get, I guess, sucked up in the aura or style of Alex Pereira, and that would be unfortunate, but great for Alex Pereira if that becomes the case.
In the chat, Spider Moose says Pereira versus Ankalaev is going to be epic. But then he says it's like intermittent fasting. Get over it. No, man, you can't drink. I get the part about you could consume your food later or, before the sun comes up. Yes, but you can't also drink throughout the day. And these world-class athletes are always hydrating. I've seen a lot of athletes in other sports go through this. It's not an easy thing. It's not as easy as to dismiss as intermittent fasting. Danny, what are your thoughts on this epic fight that's been booked by the UFC in the light heavyweight division?
Finally, this fight should have happened last year, but in my opinion, Ankalaev got skipped over 3 times because he was more deserving than any of the fighters that competed against Pereira. The 3 fighters that competed against Pereira in 2024. So we know that the UFC likes Alex Pereira a lot. Obviously, he's their star, probably the best thing that could have happened to them in the last half decade or so. Him winning, him champion is good for the UFC. So you understand some of the decision making, but this was inevitable. If they put anybody else in there but Ankalaev at this point in time, I mean, I would have thrown a riot, because it's just, what is this? At some point, you do gotta sort of cater to the sporting fact of this thing, of MMA. So finally, this fight is being made as the right fight, is the biggest challenge for Alex Pereira. I'm really interested in it. It might not be as sexy as Khalil Roundtree versus Pereira in terms of styles, but I really want to see how good Pereira is, because certainly a star has done a lot for the sport, but you know, we need to see him against a proper wrestler, and he's getting that in this matchup. I do want to put sort of my conspiracy theory hat back on. It is interesting that this fight is being done in Ramadan, right? Like it might have just been coincidence the way the cards play out, right? But I guess if you do have interest to maintain Pereira as champion, this kind of would be an appropriate, you know, spot to book him against Ankalaev and kind of stack the deck against him. And Ankalaev, seeing what happened in 2024, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be keen on skipping this opportunity, because maybe it might not come around and he might have to face another killer and maybe lose, and then everything's over. So yeah, very interesting fight. I love it. This fight should have been made a year ago.
Great job, guys, on today's SBC. We got to close up shop here, but a couple shout outs real quick. Goes and I do MMA Junkie Radio twice a week. Catch it at your favorite podcast platform. Danny hosts Hablemos MMA. For those of you that consume your MMA content in Espanol, he has great guests, and he does some weekly stuff there going on. And then The Bonfire has come out in the last few months. Mike's new podcast. Catch it on YouTube or at your favorite podcast platform as well. It's lit, like they say. And Mike, you're getting a lot of love there in the chat. The MMA Media Titan, I love it. Brian John is giving you some love. A few other guys saying you asked great questions. Folks, on your way out, if you can hit the like button, we appreciate it. How about hitting the subscribe button so you're always aware of all the content that we put up on your behalf? Also, shout out to the LA Fire Department. I love the UFC giving them some love, all the first responders, and I even love seeing the Rams you know, wearing gear as well that acknowledged that city really needed an event like what they got. And the Rams, I'm not their fans or anything like that, but they fought valiantly out in Philadelphia. Overreaction Time's another show that we put out. So catch that on Tuesdays, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Tomorrow will be Fight Out of Noon, and Simon Samano, the host, they'll be doing their thing at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, where you can catch this show every week. And how about Cold Coffee's Ohio State Buckeyes? I don't know if he wants to make a cameo, but he's pumped. Look at him. Look at him. He's ready to go.
Let's go.
This is the guy that gets the great highlights that go along with this show. You can thank him. That's Cold Coffee. He's going to be an Emmy Award-winning producer one day because he puts together fantastic stuff. Him and my other guy, Abby, man, they are the backbone of our website. So if you don't have a team to root for tonight's college football championship, root for his Ohio State Buckeyes. And I think that's it. Guys,
Sure.
Darren Till, congratulations on your win at Misfits Boxing. A lot of people have been praising him. Even Dana White was brought him up and gave him some love.
So Anthony Taylor's okay though.
Yeah. Congrats to Darren Till. Says he wants to run it with Masvidal, and I forget who else. He threw a couple. I think Mike Patty was another name that he threw out. So we'll see. Folks, we're out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day and go out and be a champion. We'll talk to you soon.